Well, we have an update on a story we first told you about yesterday, a reality show for citizenship. Is it true or is it not true? Plus, a controversial plane gift confirmed on the record and a potential change to who can easily get a COVID vaccine booster. All light, easy stories today. Let's walk into the storm together. I'm Jenna, and this is Smarter News. So it's not going to be light and easy, but it is going to be interesting. We have quite a few stories to get to today, including an update to a story I first told you about yesterday. It was an article in the Wall Street Journal that got my attention that detailed a reality show for citizenship. Apparently, it was a proposal that was given to the Department of Homeland Security. And I was really curious about this. I've never heard about something like that before. And this story was published in the Wall Street Journal. It had direct original quotes from the Department of Homeland Security. And it also provided some context suggesting that the show predated the Trump administration, that it's been floating around DC for, 10, 15 years in front of Democrats and Republicans. So I thought it was interesting. We used it as a way to talk about immigration and talk about what's happening at the border more specifically when it comes to some new data that we had. But we did mention it. And as I was recording yesterday, something happened. So there's a lot of testimony, a lot of hearings that are happening on Capitol Hill. And one of them involved the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. And she received this question with Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut.
I'm sure you've seen the recent reports that your agency is going to sponsor a reality show, TV show, in which immigrants would compete for U.S. citizenship. Is DHS seriously vetting a reality show for immigrants to obtain U.S. citizenship? Your spokesperson is quoted in the Wall Street Journal. I'm going to ask that article be in the record, Mr. Chairman, if there's no objection, saying that, quote, it's in the very beginning stages of that vetting process. Each proposal undergoes a thorough vetting process prior to denial or approval.
Sir, we have no knowledge of a reality show. There may have been something submitted to the department, but I did not know anything about this reality show. Until the reporter reached out, we told him we have no knowledge of it. We don't know what he's talking about, and they still printed wrong information. So that article, in fact, they had to change it later because they lied so bad, and they had us on the record saying, I had no knowledge of a reality show. The department didn't. There may have been something submitted somewhere along the line because there are proposals pitched to the department, but me and my executive team have no knowledge of a reality show, and it's not under consideration.
Your response is to confirm that you will not do a reality show.
There are no plans whatsoever to do a reality show.
And that your spokesperson was completely misquoted as saying that it was being vetted.
That article was completely inaccurate.
So, wow, that got our attention. It also said, we should note in the Wall Street Journal, that it may not have been that Secretary Noem would know anything about this program in particular, that it was kind of at a low level. There's all sorts of proposals. And so we didn't mention that she would know about it, but that the Department of Homeland Security would know about it in some way. So because of this confusion, I reached out to the Department of Homeland Security and I received a statement that I want to read to you in full. Just before I do, I want to add this. Apparently, the Wall Street Journal was referencing, in part in their reporting, a report from the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail can occasionally have more tabloid stories. And because of that, if there was a story in the Daily Mail by itself, probably wouldn't touch it. But the Wall Street Journal is a little bit different. It's more news-based. So I just want to add that clarity because of what is said in this statement. Quote, this is completely false. Daily Mail's reporting, in quotes, is an affront to journalism. Secretary Noem has not backed nor is even aware of the pitch of any scripted or reality show. DHS receives hundreds of television show pitches a year, ranging from documentaries surrounding ICE and CBP border operations to white-collar investigations by HSI, that's Homeland Security Investigations. Each proposal undergoes a thorough vetting process prior to denial or approval. We need to revive patriotism and civic duty in this country, and we're happy to review out-of-the-box pitches. This pitch has not received approval or rejection by the staff, end quote. So again, I did not use the Daily Mail piece. And so I resent after receiving that statement, which by the way, I was grateful for because it's always great to have something on the record. I resent the Wall Street Journal piece asking specifically if there's anything there that is an issue, because I'd like to correct that if I can. And also notice that the Wall Street Journal did not correct any of their reporting. So here's my takeaway from this. Apparently, again, this producer has floated this idea for years. Maybe the reporting was a little overzealous about how far along he was in the process. And again, because of the Trump administration's more media savvy approach to Homeland Security, for example, running commercials about immigration policy, this would get more attention than it would under another administration. Apparently, Secretary Noem doesn't know about it, isn't considering it, doesn't apparently think it's a good idea. So we walk away thinking, is it a concept that could ever move forward for any reason? Or is this sort of dead in the water? Or because of this debate, could we actually see this show in some capacity? It's hard to know. By the way, it's worth pointing out that the Daily Mail is completely standing by their reporting. So they say that they actually have internal documents, internal communication that confirms that Secretary Noem was aware of the proposal and that she also endorsed it. So let's see what happens next and whether or not we see any more word of a development of this show, especially now that so many people are talking about it. Why am I sharing all of this? I think it's actually really interesting, an interesting insight to journalism right now and reporting, because here I was using a reliable source, the Wall Street Journal, that had a direct quote. And this is why I felt confident to talk about this story. And it's another reason to emphasize why on the record quotes really, really matter. And it's a reminder to me that even when I see a direct quote, it never hurts to check, a second or third time. Having something on the record, though, connects to this next story. One of our big controversial stories last week was this question about whether or not President Trump, the White House, the Trump administration was going to receive a gift of a $400 million plane from Qatar. This got a lot of news because President Trump was overseas traveling in the Middle East, and there were all sorts of questions about whether or not this was legal, whether or not this was ethical, whether or not this was smart strategically. I mean, there was a lot of different angles to the story. What the story did not have, though, was confirmation. So the White House gave out a big fact sheet of all the things that were accomplished in the Middle East, but there was no mention of this plane. And as a journalist, this slowed me down because I wanted something that was on the record. Sure, the president was talking about this sort of conceptually, but we didn't actually see the plane. And was it going to go through? Is it a deal that was going to happen? What was actually on the record? Well, today we actually have something on the record, and this is new news. So on Wednesday, the Pentagon spokesperson said on the record, quote, "The Secretary of Defense has accepted a Boeing 747 from Qatar in accordance with all federal rules and regulations." The reporting goes on to say that, there's a big question about whether or not and when this plane would actually come into use, how it could be outfitted or retrofitted to be used in a capacity for the president or, quite frankly, anyone else. But this is the first confirmation we have on the record of the Pentagon actually receiving the plane. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that. What, again, happens next, whether or not this is a good idea, even if it is legal, a question of whether or not it is ethical, whether or not it's strategically smart, these debates will continue, but now it's in possession of the Pentagon. Final story today is about another controversial topic, and that is the COVID-19 vaccines. I don't have to tell you that. There's been a lot of controversy over this topic for many years now. And there's something new that we got this week from the FDA. This is in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it was written by the head of the FDA along with another official. And the quote from the piece, the title of the piece, is an evidence-based approach to COVID-19 vaccination. So what is this all about? Why are we even talking about this? What the FDA is saying here, and I'm going to read you part of the piece, is a change of recommendation or perhaps even policy for those who would like to get a COVID-19 booster. And what the FDA is now saying is that it wants more information for those in a certain age bracket that have low risk with COVID-19. So let me read from this piece. Although the rapid development of multiple COVID-19 vaccines in 2020 represents a major scientific, medical, and regulatory accomplishment, the benefit of repeat dosing, particularly among low-risk persons who may have previously received multiple doses of the COVID-19 vaccines, had multiple COVID-19 infections, or both, is uncertain. The American people, along with many healthcare providers, remain unconvinced. And it goes on to talk about vaccine skepticism in general of the COVID-19 vaccine and how Americans are feeling about the recommendation of this booster, but also how the FDA is now feeling about the recommendation of this booster with new leadership in the FDA. And what they're saying is they want more information. So for those of you who are over 65 or those that have a pre-existing condition or one health condition that could put you at a higher risk, the booster, as we call it, an additional dose of the COVID-19 vaccine is available to you. But for those that are falling within that gray zone of being under 65 and not necessarily having higher risk, the FDA is saying that they're not going to just green light the booster as they do for, let's say, a flu vaccine. You've seen all the commercials, right? You're going to get your flu vaccine this year. By the way, you just get your flu vaccine and get the COVID-19 vaccine. That's not going to be the case. So even though this could be a new recommendation or policy moving forward, and there's sort of this question about implementation. So does that mean like a pharmacist, you go to a pharmacist and say, hey, I want the COVID-19 vaccine, and they would be checking to see if they could actually administer that to you based on your age, or do you need to get a prescription for your doctor? Like, how would this actually work is a question. And even with those sort of brackets of saying, hey, if you're older than 65 or you have a pre-existing condition, that could still hit, estimates of 100 million to 200 million Americans could still easily have access to the booster. But here's something else that was written in this piece, just to sort of bring it home as to, why is the FDA doing this? Here's a quote from the piece. We simply don't know whether a healthy 52-year-old woman with a normal BMI, so normal weight, who has had COVID-19 3 times, and has received 6 previous doses of a COVID-19 vaccine will benefit from the 7th dose. This policy will compel much needed evidence generation. So they're saying, hey, drug companies, if you still want to offer these doses, like here's our recommendation for how to test if this is effective, whether or not this repeated boosting of the COVID-19 vaccine actually helps people or not. So they're trying to make this recommendation of how additional trials could take place to eventually get that recommendation from the FDA. But they're not just going to green light. There's no rubber stamping here for this booster. That's the change. So again, more on this as we get it. And there seems to be some consternation amongst the medical community of saying, well, wait a minute, the CDC has recommended this. And usually there's a vaccine advisory board. What happens to them? And why is this being published in the New England Journal of Medicine? What is this all about? But this is the news as of now, and I just want to make you aware of it, even though we're a little bit away from flu season. Okay, quick final note, because there's a lot of question about what's going on with this budget bill. What's been referred to as the big, beautiful bill, even officially by Congress. Right now, where things sit is that this bill is still being chewed over in a committee before it has to head to the floor for a full vote. And there's still questions about how this final bill is coming together. So the potential is, and it really doesn't matter when you hear this, the potential is you could see a vote on this bill in the next several hours before you actually hear this podcast. Or we could see it over the next several days, or we could see it before Memorial Day, or we could not see it at all. Speaker Johnson, who is in charge of trying to get this bill through the House, has set Memorial Day as sort of an arbitrary deadline. There's no reason it has to be Memorial Day that the House has to vote on this. But if they lose momentum here, the Republicans, then it's a question about how do they recapture it and move a bill forward as we get further into summer, which becomes more difficult. And remember, the House has to pass something, the Senate is going to have to pass it and approve it, and then it would actually become the law of the land. So this is a big step before the spending bill would actually become law, and we'll see what takes place. But there's a lot of different possibilities now, and I think that's just news to know there's a lot of possibilities on the table. So keep you posted on all of that. That's your wrap up of all the controversial stories that are out there. I'm sure there's more. Please tell us what you'd like to hear more about. hello@smarternews.com. But hope this was helpful and hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Thank you for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan, Smarter News. I'm Jenna. I'll talk to you soon.